We've officially passed the halfway point of the Montreal Canadiens season. This is a pretty simple question for you guys. What are your takeaways of the Montreal Canadiens season to this point?
Who are the real Montreal Canadiens? Are they the team 7-1-2 in their first 10 games, or the team after that? I think, as they say, never believe a team's as good as they are when they're on a winning streak, and never believe they're as bad as they are when they're on a losing streak. I think this is still a pretty good hockey team. There's holes, but every team in the NHL has holes. Carey Price, if he plays the way Carey Price can, this is a better hockey team, obviously. But this team should make the playoffs. Before the season started, I wrote a column about how the biggest question mark would be the three young centers. That remains a question mark moving forward. There's been growing pains with Suzuki and Kotkaniemi and Jake Evans. They need to play better. Philip Danault needs to play better. It's hard to win when you're getting almost no offense out of your centers. So that's the biggest hole on this team. Apart from that, this is a pretty good team. And they should get into the playoffs. Once they get there, if Carey Price plays well, then we'll see what can happen. But it's sort of hard to figure them out. And not only the Canadiens, when you look at the Leafs, who were running away, and then all of a sudden they go 1-5 during a 6-game stretch. The grind of this, playing every second night is going to wear down all teams. But from narrow it down, the Canadiens are a good hockey team. They're good enough to get in the playoffs. Are they good enough to win the Stanley Cup? I don't think so. But there's always upsets in the playoffs. But they should be in the playoffs.
Yeah, I just feel like there's just too much inconsistency on this team. The way that they started the season, they look completely different than the team that they are now, scoring all kinds of goals, winning all kinds of games. And then they hit a wall in early February, and then things start to fall apart. Then they, have games where things are looking good. They look like they're improving, and then they have a little bit of a hiccup. So that's the biggest thing with this team is I'm not exactly sure on any given night who's going to show up. And I know that does happen in sports, but I find with the Canadiens, it happens more often than not that they come and it's like, where was this team from last game that was playing so well? What is this product on the ice right now? So that's just it with me, is that there's just a lot of question marks around this team.
Yeah, I think, after firing all the coaches, the expectations were, okay, we're not going to blame, these coaches. You got new coaches, you got new voices. Now it's up to the players to perform. And I think, generally speaking, there's a lot of people that were hopeful that we're going to see much more positive play in a lot of the players. And the inconsistencies that we've seen has, put them in a situation where they've struggled in a lot of areas. And you talk about goaltending, you talk about Carey not doing what he was doing earlier on. You talk about special teams, especially their penalty killing as of late has struggled. There's certain areas in their overall game that have to get better in order for them to survive this grinding last stretch of the season. And it's going to be a real test of each and every one of those guys to find a way to be better in a lot of areas and consistently put it out there each and every night to allow them to stay in the mix, because everybody knows you got to get in the playoffs, and there's anything can happen. But there's a lot of areas in the team that they have to improve on to get better down the stretch.
Yeah, this is on the players now. I mean, Marc Bergevin went out in the offseason, spent up to the cap, brought in good players, fired the head coach, fired the associate coach, fired the goalie coach. To me, I look at the leadership group on this team, and they need to step up. We're seeing some of the same problems that we had with the previous coach, where guys aren't ready to play, slow starts to games. We keep hearing about this great leader that Shea Weber is. He needs to show it, and Carey Price needs to show it during the second half of the season. It'd be inexcusable. It'd be for this team to miss the playoffs again. Would be then you really got to look like there's a deep-rooted problem on this team. If after all the changes that they've done in the offseason, all the coaching changes, they still aren't good enough to get in the playoffs, there's something deeply rooted that's wrong with this team.
I think Marc Bergevin is trying to call one of you guys to go over a trade idea. Is that what's going on here in the background? I mean, this is what we have to deal with when we do these shows from home. Not sure who that is, and no one has to admit it. It's totally cool. I just want to ask very quickly here: the team as it is right now, do you all view it as a playoff team? Because I still very much do. I still think they've done enough good to obviously put themselves in a playoff position. I think this team is still good enough to just make the playoffs. But I think if this team wants to go beyond that, I still think they could make a move or two. What do you guys think?
Well, that's what I think is the problem with the Canadiens is, yes, this could be a good enough team to make the playoffs, but can they go far? And is making the playoffs all that is okay in Montreal? You know, shouldn't it be building a team that could potentially win the Stanley Cups and not just get into the playoffs and see what happens?
One of the reasons they're going to get in the playoffs, I think, is just Ottawa's not going to make it. Vancouver's horrible. So there's 5 teams fighting for 4 spots. The Oilers are so much built on their, Draisaitl and McDavid. If one of those guys were to get hurt, they're not going to make the playoffs. So they should get in, but it's, we see in the playoffs every year there's upsets, right? There's a number 8 seed that knocks off a number 1 seed almost every year. And the Canadiens showed in the postseason last year what they could do when Carey Price plays really well. Carey Price was outstanding. They couldn't get enough offense. Now with the addition of Toffoli and Anderson, you think that offense should be better. So if they get in the playoffs, and especially in the way it's set up this year, you're only playing the Canadian teams until you get to the Stanley Cup semifinals. So there's a good chance for can they get out of their division? Yeah, you look at the problems that the Leafs have had in the playoffs in the past. But they should get into the playoffs. If they don't get into the playoffs, as I said, I think Jeff Molson has to try and think about what he's going to do with this team moving forward.
Yeah, I personally believe they're good enough to get in the playoffs. I mean, they have shown some games that they're really, really tough to beat. And I think there's enough character in that room for them to understand, okay, this is crunch time. We have to be really good each and every night. And let's just, don't talk about scheduling anymore. Don't talk about, fatigue factor, time changes. Everybody in the division deals with that. Now it's a test of your character as a group for them to identify and realize, okay, how do we have to play to have success and bring it every night? Because they're capable of doing it, and there's no more excuses at this point. You find a way to do it, and take the excuses out of the picture.
Then you find that old no excuses sign, put it back up in the locker room.
Oh my goodness, we got to bring that up again. Oh, good Lord. Do you think the Montreal Canadiens are good enough as they are? Do you think they're going to make the playoffs? Let us know in the comments section below, and visit hockeyinsideout.com to check out our full episode.